Hello and welcome to our little concert talk. Thank you very much for your time that we can talk together about a wonderful concert program we are soon to have in Nürnberg and at the upcoming England tour. With me today are Chief Conductor Jonathan Darlington and our piano soloist Federico Colli. So let me just introduce, because I think everybody knows Jonathan Darlington, our chief conductor, very well. Federico Colli is born in Brescia, Italy, studied in Milan, Imola and Salzburg. He won several prizes, like, for example, the Salzburg Mozart competition or the International Piano competition in Leeds. The International Piano magazine selected him as one of the 30 pianists under 30 who are likely to dominate the world stage in years to come. So I think that's a kind of an introduction. Thank you for your time, Federico, to talk with us about the upcoming programs.
Sure, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Let's start with the Beethoven Piano Concerto Number 5. It's called, in English-speaking countries, it's called Emperor Concerto, but it's not an original title. It's unknown if it's really transferring to an emperor or just somebody who said this concerto is the emperor of all piano concertos. We are glad to hear it. It's one of the most famous piano concerts at all. So let's talk about it.
I'm sure that everybody knows how beautiful and how deep is this piano concerto and how important is this concerto represent for the music and for the musical tradition, at least our Western musical tradition. I just can mention that this particular piano concerto represents a lot for my life, because maybe it's the concerto that I play the most. I played almost, in many countries. I was lucky enough to perform this beautiful piano concerto, and actually it is one of the biggest piano concerto that I performed at the beginning of my career and when I was a student at the time, and I selected this piece to be played in the final round of the Leeds piano competition. So I could choose among many piano concerti, but I really chose the Emperor piano concerto because I consider this music very close to my soul. I think it can, Beethoven in general, but especially this piano concerto, can represent a lot of my personality, many sides of my personality. You can find almost everything in this music. There is this beautiful second movement, which is like a placid lake, lake of remembering a love or something beautiful happened in the past, and it is surrounded by two majestic and actually very long movements. Like the first, which is a very the form of the first movement is very much impressive, and the orchestration of the last movement is just astonishing. There is this little passage, actually not quite little, but the mid, all the modulations in the mid part of the third movement is just, searching for the tonalities coming from B flat major and then A flat major and then E major and then returning to E flat major. So the bass tonality. He was looking for their place, for the right harmonies. And also the ending is so majestic and is so beautiful. With piano and timpani and percussion. There is this unique dialogue between piano and percussion. So the orchestration in the last movement is just amazing. I'm so happy to have the chance to play again this season with your orchestra. Actually, this season I'm playing quite a lot this concerto. I recently played in Krakow with the Krakow Philharmonic, and yeah, it's always a pure joy for me to play this concerto.
It's interesting you talk about the orchestration at the end, the dialogue between the piano and especially the timp, because what was happening, as you know, in where Beethoven was living, there was war going on, so that kind of rumble in the background has reminiscences of something quite very frightening and very, very disturbing. But the E flat tonality is the kind of the other side of his Fifth Symphony, which is C minor and then C major, and so you have there's a lot of the Fifth Symphony going on in the Fifth Concerto as well. At least I feel the sort of doppelganger idea,
Yeah, you already mentioned it was written during the French occupation by Napoleon of Vienna, and Beethoven had already lost most of his hearing capacities, but he was very, very sensitive with his remaining hearing, and all those war noises were horrible for him. So it's said that he escaped to his brother's cellar and buried his ears with cushions to blunt the sound. And he wrote to his publisher, "Nothing but drums, cannons, and human misery of every sort." So it was a very special situation. And if you point out like timpani and all that, it's quite special, because these kind of sounds were so exhausting for him. And nevertheless, he was able to write such beautiful music out of it. It's quite amazing.
Yeah. So my question is, so when did you start actually what was your very first contact with the concerto?
I was born in Brescia, and Brescia is the birthplace also to Vendetta Michelangeli. So I grew up with a lot of fascinating by stories and legend around the myth of Benedetto Michelangeli. And one of the first recording I ever met of this piano concerto was Michelangeli. I don't remember if Giulini or Celibidache conducting. But yeah, that was one of my first relationship with this concerto, and I was definitively in love when I hear the Radu Lupu playing this concerto. I think with the London Symphony, André Previn, maybe the conductor, I'm not sure. I think the London Symphony was right after his winning at the Leeds.
Yeah.
So I was really fascinating, because every time Radu Lupu was able to find the new meanings and to find this soft and gentle character, even in the most winning music. I mean, this sad, nostalgic, melancholic, and joyful, but in the inner side.
Yes.
Inner side, not. I mean, spreading out all the joy or all the drama. Never. I mean, Radu Lupu was able to put everything inside, close the door, close the window, and whispering. I really, really enjoyed that performance, and still remember.
But I think the Michelangeli Giulini combination, because they really didn't like each other. And so I always felt that when they were, I don't remember if I ever saw them perform it together, but I do remember them performing other things together, and that tension between these two giants of the musical world at that time, you could feel it in the audience, but it was so creative at the same time, because they really did not get on. And it was a little bit like sort of the Bernstein and Glenn Gould kind of combination,
with drums.
Yeah.
First piano concerto.
I always find it really fascinating that often when people get on really well on stage, it's not necessarily as electric as when people don't get on stage. It's there. It doesn't always work like that, of course, because we're going to get on really well and it'll be fantastic. But but it can work out that because like the Amadeus Quartet. They really didn't get on, especially towards the middle and late years. They'd take different flights, get to the same venue, but because they couldn't bear to be with each other anymore. But there was a massive tension and excitement in their playing. Perhaps it was due to the fact they didn't get on so well. I don't know.
Yeah, and together with Grieg, which is the other piano concerto we are going to perform, I think that the orchestra has a key role in Beethoven. I mean, the piano part, of course, is preeminent, but most of the time, piano is an instrument inside the orchestra, so it's more concertato writing. So the communication between the piano conductor and the orchestra, I mean, these three elements should getting together in order to create something beautiful. And I think that the orchestra has a vital part in supporting the idea of the pianist and of the conductor. Absolutely. Together with Grieg, I mean, Grieg is also the same, but Grieg maybe it's more immediate to understand this because it's a purely romantic concerto.
Yeah. I mean, the Grieg, he suffers from this sort of shadow of Schumann, this that people always say, but it's a completely different world. It's a different sound world. It's a different animal altogether. And I never understand why people, just because he took, he liked the concerto and he took an example from it, doesn't necessarily mean that, they're in any way similar.
So you already came to Grieg. So you want to close the Beethoven subject with this last few words you just had, or are there remaining ideas you desperately want to talk about?
The problem is that so much has been written about that concerto, and so much has been written, of course, about Beethoven, that one is left, left thinking, okay, well, I don't really want to say anything, because if you want to find out about it, go and read a book, So we just play it.
So let me just finish with one small funny anecdote about the Beethoven concerto, because you were pointing on several different pianists playing the concerto. It is said to have been one of the favorite concerts to play of Franz Liszt. And there was a concert in 1877 where Liszt played only with 9 fingers because he had an injury in one finger. And by then, 11-year-old Ferruccio Busoni was in the audience, and he was bitterly disappointed at Liszt's interpretation, but he was in fact the only one who realized. So that's a funny little story about it.
Yeah,
let's talk about Grieg. You already started with the big Schumann shadows that Grieg had to deal with. Grieg heard the Schumann concerto played by Clara Schumann in Leipzig, and he was so highly inspired and greatly influenced by Schumann's style in general. So he was beginning to write a piano concerto on his own. And it has always been most of the critic that it is too much like the Schumann concerto, same key, similar beginning. But there are a lot of things, I think, that can be pointed out that are so unique for Grieg. For example, all those sounds of nature, all this Scandinavic atmosphere. You close your eyes and you see Norwegian landscape. You can hear Norwegian folk music, the halling, the dance, the Norwegian dance, and also some very typical sounds of the Hardanger fiddle that you can hear throughout the whole thing. So I think it's not fair only to reduce him to a Schumann copy.
No, I think basically the 2 points you mentioned is the only 2 points I see of connection between Schumann and Grieg. So the key and the beginning, but that's enough, because I mean the last movement of Schumann is in major, and the last movement of Grieg is in minor. And then in general, the second movement in Schumann is just a little intermezzo. In Grieg is a huge movement with a big introduction by the orchestra. So it's nothing in compare. The exposition, the development of the first movement is much bigger in Schumann, and in Grieg is almost nothing. It's just 2 modulations. So it's totally different concerto by 2 completely different composers, and I really don't know why the tradition made a lot of mistakes. So sometimes we, an interpreter, I think nowadays we need to look at the tradition with a little bit of at least doubt. So we have to put under the lens of the doubt and say what the tradition made. It is a good thing, or it is just a bad thing, or it is just made by unconsciousness or ignorance, or I don't know, was mystification or something. So I think that Grieg has a key role in our Western music for many reasons. First was one of the composers that put together a national style, together what happening with Ravel in France, for example. They took the tradition of their national music in order to develop a national school. And Grieg was able to find this inspiration coming from the folk song of Norway, from the sound of the nature, from the atmosphere, the cultural and natural atmosphere of his land, and that's quite unique. And you can feel this in his music, because again, the Schumann concerto is a large chamber music piece. It's a large chamber music piece, and also the approach of the piano or of the pianist should be in that direction. So beautiful dialogues with the instrument, but the orchestration of the Schumann is one of the finest in the music literature. In Grieg is completely another point of view. I mean, the soloist has this preeminent role, and the way of how Grieg treated the piano was most of the time ferocious, violent. I mean, you can hear this breeze and this wind from the north coming, and you are freezing and you are afraid of this. I mean, Grieg was able to understand the sublime, what was really the sublime, which is a real German word. But at the beginning, the sublime is scary to you. So you understand this force of the nature, and you are scared by them, and you can find the beauty of the sublime, but avoiding the scary. The scary at the beginning and the concern, the worry is absolutely important to create this shock. Then you go deep and much deeper, and then you can find the real beauty. That's Grieg. And also the cadenza, which is very big with bass and range of the sonorities from the up to the upper part of the keyboard down to the bass. I mean, it's want to discover and embrace all the range of the keyboard. That's because the shock of this music should be absolutely violent. I think, for many reasons, I just mentioned one or couple, but it is a unique composer, as you said, and we need to treat him as a very unique composer.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Then the first you were talking about the violence in his music, which is there, and at the same time he has this incredible delicacy. I'll never forget when I was a student many years ago, listening to Émile Guilhel's play. He did a South Bank recital. He actually recorded them afterwards, and he did a recital whereas Grieg lyric pieces in the first half, and then the second half he played the Beethoven Hammerklavier. So these contrasts, and the Grieg just completely sent me to heaven. I will never forget that concert. Sent me to heaven because the music is so You're absolutely right when you're talking about the nature, and it has this, at the same time, this violence, but an incredible sense of delicacy and beauty and refinement and simplicity. And these patterns in nature that you find, which are constantly transforming themselves. It's the same basic pattern, but it's never the same. Just as in Beethoven variations, you have the same form, but it's always developing. You take the Pastoral Symphony or something. That's what it's all about, and that's what Grieg has. And that's what's so wonderful about his music. But it's this, but the simplicity of it is so difficult to capture. And that's something which I'm sure you will. It's something I will never forget. Gilels, with a great, he was one of that epoch with Richter. For me they were the two giants of Russian pianism, and I will never forget that. And it introduced me to Grieg in a different sort of way. I'd known the concerto for years before, when I was very small. But that taught me something else about the composer, which I think is often forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the natural simplicity, and he never wants to be too sophisticated, but there's always this warmth in his music, with Grieg.
There is an anecdote when Ravel and Grieg meet each other in Paris, was at the end of 19th century. It was in the house of Mollard in Paris, and they esteem each other very much. And I know this story because I'm putting together a recital program based on Ravel and Grieg, so two together. In the same program, and so Ravel esteemed a lot of Grieg, and Grieg esteemed a lot of music by Maurice Ravel. And so at that time, in the house of Mollard in Paris at the end of 19th century, they were together at that house, and Ravel started to play in a piano there Norwegian dance by Grieg. And so Ravel started to play with all his effort, and of course Ravel was a very sophisticated and elegant and aristocratic composer, and the way he played, we think that it was always very sophisticated and with a lot of raffinesse. Suddenly Grieg stand up and interrupted the execution of the Norwegian dance and say, "Maurice, what are you doing? That's a popular music, nothing to do with elegancy. Should be popular, should be, I mean, you should dance with this, more dancing, more rhythmical, more simplicity, nothing to do with all this decoration, this or French ornamental, nothing to do. It's just simple, violent. I mean, it's all there. So it let me think a lot. I mean, this simplicity, but this also his messages is so immediate, so can reach us in an immediate way, but it's very deep, very profound. I mean, there are for sure some philosophical questions behind. I mean, look, think about the first phrase of the piano in the second movement, which reminds actually the second movement by the Emperor Concerto. So this Dämmern, sunshine or sun rising. I mean, there is some, not only images, but meanings behind these images.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Caroline, for hosting me and for the nice invitation.
Thank you for your time and your words about the beautiful music we are about to hear with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good way to see you all. Bye. Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.